Hi friends, Mindy here. I have a different sort of project today. I'm going to be creating an art journal. I have one here that I made a long time ago that I'm going to kind of pattern this one off of. I'm going to be using a manila file folder here. And the reason I'm doing that is because these file folders have like a little area where you can kind of make a little spine, and so it's going to work out just perfect. So I'm doing mine approximately 5.5 inches tall and 4.5 inches wide. So I'm just lining up the edge of the where I want the spine to be and measuring to 4.5, and then I'm cutting down the side, and then I want it to be about 5.5 inches tall, so I'm going to make that cut here as well. And it's going to give me, it's about 3/4 of an inch for the spine, but it's going to be fine. It's not going to be a huge art journal. I just wanted something kind of pocket sized, sort of pocket, between a pocket and an A6 maybe. And you can make them whatever size you want to. That's just the size that I want to do. This is an old one that I made actually out of a mailing envelope, like the manila kind of mailing envelopes. But this is sort of the process that I'm going to go through. So I lost some footage there, but basically what I've done is I have taken a bunch of different things, some collage fodder, some tissue, just a bunch of different things, some old drop papers and everything. And I am just using some matte medium, and I'm adhering it down onto this cover. And the reason I'm doing it with this way, you could use matte gel medium if you wanted to, with like a card scraper or whatever. I'm just using fluid matte medium. You could use Mod Podge. I personally don't. I live in a humid area, so Mod Podge tends to get sticky, so I'm using matte medium here. And doing this is going to kind of reinforce this file folder. They're not super thick to begin with, so this is going to help. And what I'm putting down now actually is part of a tea bag. After I let it dry and emptied it out and then saved it, just adds some kind of different textures to it. And it's going to look kind of like a crazy mess until it just doesn't anymore, but that's just kind of the process. This is one of those things I really like to do. I've been doing kind of mixed media stuff like this for 10 or 15 years, and I just have been missing it, so I decided I wanted to create a little art journal so I can kind of get back to it. So I pulled out a bunch of just drop papers and different things that I've had and accumulated over the years, and I'm just collaging them down on here. So you can see I'm using this is actually some book text that had some paper, and this paper is really brittle and thick. It's a really thick paper. So I actually am, when I'm putting it down, I'm putting some matte medium on the back of it as well as on the file folder itself, and then I'm going over the top of it again, because you can see it just keeps sliding around. It's really thick paper, so I needed to make sure that was going to get stuck down there. This beautiful music paper is some vintage ephemera that I got from a friend. So thank you, Bobby. She sent me a beautiful package, and I just really wanted to preserve part of that on here. So I loved the fact that there were some handwritten dates. So I'm putting that in a spot that I know I'm going to kind of preserve that the best that I can. And so I'm just smoothing that down with a little like old ID card or whatever. And most of this I'm applying with a paintbrush, but once in a while I need to pull out that card to kind of smooth everything down. Some of the stuff does get wrinkled, but I like the texture of that, so that's fine with me. And there was this other piece of this music paper that I wanted to keep also. It was kind of where there used to be some old like Scotch tape or whatever, and it discolored the paper. And so I wanted to preserve that as well. So most of the time I'm not really like super precious about what I'm putting down or where, and you'll see why later. But there's a couple little sections that I was more careful because I knew that I wanted to really be able to preserve the look of them. This is some drop paper that I had caught some overspray with some shimmer sprays. And the thing about that is this particular, whatever was on this paper when you add the matte medium over the top, it really just takes away the shimmer, which is fine. I was really just after the base color anyway. I knew that going into it, but a lot of times when I'm doing mixed media things or whatever, I just have drop papers down. This is actually like old newsprint that you can get. Years and years ago, I just bought like an end roll, and it's lasted me forever. And you can go get that at the newspaper office, and they just sell like their end rolls. It's $5 or $10, and you get basically newsprint that's not been printed on yet. Works great for backgrounds and catching painty things and all that kind of stuff. So I use it a lot for drop papers when I'm doing mixed media things, and so that had some overspray. So you can see that the glitter part of it really got lost on there, and that's okay. So now I'm just drying with my heat tool, and I'm work on the inside now. And it just seemed appropriate to put some of my favorite tissue. This, if you recognize it, is from By the Well for God. If you ever get a package from them, it comes lovingly wrapped in this beautiful tissue, and it just makes me smile. So I'm gonna cover the entire inside of this cover with this pattern paper, or tissue paper. It's printed tissue paper. So I'm trying to put it on as smooth as I can. I did get some wrinkles in there, and that's fine too. And again, I'm putting the matte medium down behind it and on top of it, and that just kind of helps it to really adhere, and it also kind of helps it so that it gets more translucent. So, and you can see my envelope, or my file folder here, is getting a little bit kind of warped, but it will all straighten out eventually. So again, just putting on, making sure that I'm getting really good coverage at the ends, because I'm going to be cutting that off. I need to make sure that that is sealed down really, really well. So I'm going around just making sure that everything is glued down. I needed to add a little bit more here, and then I'm just going back over it, just making sure that everything is really, really adhered well, and using some little drops that were still there. So now I have this pretty well done. I'm going to kind of tear this down just a little bit so I can work with this some more. So again, this is going to be the inside of the cover. I'm just going to dry that with my heat tool. I'm trying to be careful with matte medium. It can kind of bubble if you get too much heat on it, so just, you know, keep your heat tool moving or whatever. And then now I have everything here done and it's dry, so I'm going to take my scissors and just very carefully trim around the outside and get all that excess tissue off. And you can see on the front it's not completely 100% covered, but that's fine, and that's exactly what I wanted actually. So now what I'm going to do is kind of try and work with this little cover just a little bit. So in this bottle I have some gesso, but it's been watered down. I got to the end of the bottle and then I just added a little bit of water, and that gives me a wash so that it's not so intense. So I'm just applying that kind of with a dry brush, just to try to kind of knock back some of the intensity, just ever so slightly. And you can see some places I got it a little bit more white than I wanted it, so I'm kind of just dabbing it up, and it's going to kind of make everything feel like it's more cohesive and all part of one thing. So this process is really a lot about kind of applying things and then taking them off and applying them. And you can see I put quite a bit here of my wash, and so it was really covering up a lot of that tissue, that pattern. And so I just came back in with a baby wipe, and I'm just kind of dabbing a little bit so that I can still really see that design in there. And I took a little too much off, so I'm just adding some back. You can just go back and forth as many times as you need to kind of get the look that you want. And then I got some on the edges, so I'm just going to add a little bit of paint on the front. So this is all just part of an art journal to me anyway. I know that kind of means different things to different people, but anyway, so now I'm just pulling down some colors. These are some golden colors, golden acrylics. They are pretty translucent, so what I'm doing is I'm just kind of sort of go with the back of my palette knife and just very lightly kind of hit some of those raised places and just kind of scraping on some of this color. This is a teal color. And then I'm going to come in with this, I believe this was ultramarine violet, this purple color. And it's a really intense color, so I'm going to kind of do this one sparingly for right now. And again, I'm just kind of getting some of it on the back of my palette knife and just hitting some of those raised places. And then I'm going to add a little bit more into my mat. I should have mentioned I'm working on a nonstick sheet here that is from Ranger. So, and then I have that wash of gesso, and I'm going to mix those two colors just to try to get a lighter purple so that it's just not so intense. I can add more of it. And then this is a magenta color. I really like this color combination together. So, and again, I've added a little bit of gesso to kind of knock back some of the intensity of those colors. These are the first golden acrylics that I've owned. They're really, really intense. So I needed to kind of lighten them up just a little bit. And then I wanted to go back in with just a little bit more of that really dark purple. So I'm taking a paintbrush here and just dry brushing it into some of the areas, and I'm just really lightly doing it. So again, it just kind of hits those high areas. And then I lost some footage here too. So off camera, I kind of drew a little image that I wanted on the front of my cover, trying to keep in mind places that I was really wanting to preserve. And so I made like this little abstract leaf pattern, and over here on the back side, I've drawn some other images. And then what I'm going to do here is just use, this is actually an empty washi roll, and to make a circle here. And then over to the right on this very fancy palette that I have, this paper plate, I have some colors pulled out. And there's a couple different teals, 3 different teals, and a purple and a magenta and like a coral color. And so what I'm doing is very carefully, I'm going in painting in the negative space around those images that I drew. And this is the part that gets really messy. I don't know how to not do this in a messy way. This is just my process. So you'll see me painting with my paintbrush. You'll see me painting like finger painting. It's just, I don't know. I enjoy it, and so I just feel like I can get some different blends and stuff. So you'll see me using different fingers and whatever. So basically what I'm trying to do is make these colors kind of move from one color, like a color block, but from one color into the next pretty seamlessly. And one way to do that is to use gesso when you're kind of blending in your colors. So I'm just applying, like here I'm applying some of this teal color, and then I'll move it into this magenta color, and then I'll kind of blend those two together with my finger or with some gesso. And I'm going to go around, again, all the negative spaces of these areas that I'm trying to preserve. And so here I've come in with that lighter color teal, and you can't really see the pencil markings all that well, but that's why I did that. So I would make sure, like I wanted to save those dates, so I made sure that they were inside one of these leaves. And then as I come down to the bottom, I'm just picking up different colors and just getting a little bit on one edge or the other of my paintbrush, and kind of just smoothing it all together, getting some gesso in there. This is really kind of just intuitive. I can't really say why I'm choosing to put which color wherever. It just depends, like what's in the background or the color that I want next to it. So again, I'm just picking up a little magenta here and then getting a little bit of gesso on my finger to kind of blend that out. So it's not like a harsh line from one color into the next color. The gesso really helps it just kind of blend. It almost gives it like a cloudy kind of blend to it. And so again, I'm just going to do that all over this cover. And I started out thinking that I was going to have this kind of scallop pattern on this left side, and so I'm kind of working around that, and I actually end up changing that in a little bit. But that's the good thing about this. Acrylic paint is very forgiving because you can always just add another layer over the top of it. So I'm just adding some blues and some purples, and sometimes I'm using gesso, sometimes I'm just picking up the color and then, coming back with another layer and then letting it blend together. Here's where I kind of decide I don't really like that scallop part, so I'm going to work in that area. And then I'm just adding some gesso, mixing a couple of the colors together to kind of get a blend there. And again, I'm just going to do this around all of the shapes that I have drawn. And I'm basically negative space is where I'm painting. And that way you can still sort of see all of the collage-y bits in those open areas. And you can see I'm just, again, going in there with my finger, kind of blending the colors together. Adding some magenta here. These are not my golden paints. These are just some your run-of-the-mill craft paint. I think that color, that magenta color, is called like razzleberry or something like that. I can't remember all of the names. They're like Americana paints, but just use whatever you have, whatever color palette you like. This is a color palette that I just tend to gravitate towards a lot. I just really like it. So I'm just, again, blending. There's really not much I can say about, this. Like I said, it's kind of just intuitive here. So this area, again, I'm working on that left side where I had sort of created the scallops. I didn't really end up liking that very well, so now I'm just making some circle shapes and filling in that different area. Having it all on that one side, I don't know, it wasn't working for me. So I'm just going in and blending all the colors, using some gesso here, using my paintbrush, using my fingers. Can't really quite decide which is better. I will say, if you're going to do this kind of with your fingers, use a different finger for each color. It just kind of helps. And then now what I'm doing is I'm taking a paint pen. This is a black paint marker. And now I'm going to outline all of those shapes. And this is what's really going to kind of help them pop up off of the background. And I'm not being too picky about this, if it's inside the lines or, it's not exact, which is part of why I like it. But I'm just using a really bold tip paint pen here and going around all of those shapes. And that's just really sets off the background from those kind of images that are sort of trapped inside. And you could go back after you do this and do another layer of paint or whatever if you wanted to. At this point, I thought I was going to do that and just kind of add some more colors, but by the time I got finished, I decided I wasn't really necessary. So I'm just going around here, adding some shapes, going around in all of those places that I decided to isolate. I'm just using my marker. And you can see I'm not getting like perfect circles because I'm not tracing around something that's, round or whatever. So they're a little wonky, but that's fine with me. So at this point, I decided it needed a little something else, and I wasn't sure what that was going to be. So I kind of contemplate for a minute, and then I decide I wanted to bring this up close. I don't know if you can still see in person. You can kind of see the layers that are still underneath there. Even though there's paint over the top, you can still see like some of the music paper and some of the book text and all that. And even some of the areas that were like stamped. You can still see a lot of that through there. It's not completely transparent, but just parts of it peek through. So here I just went around with my marker, and I'm just creating like a little dotted border. And then I decided to go around all of the images with that same black marker. And this is what it looks like when it's finished. I added some white as well. So this was part 1. I'll do the part 2 of this journal where I add the pages. But if you like this video, I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And until next time, bye-bye.